Learner support. Please remember that you are responsible for your own learning. Ensure you manage your studies, practical, workplace, and portfolio time responsibly. We are here to guide and assist you. Module 1. Understand outcomes-based education and training. The following learning outcomes are covered in this module. Explain the outcomes-based approach to education and training. Describe the National Qualifications Framework. Describe and explain unit standards. Describe and explain qualifications. Develop a broad plan for implementing the NQF within an organization. What is outcomes-based education? Outcomes-based education means clearly focusing and organizing an educational system around what is essential for all students to be able to do successfully at the end of their learning experience. Starting with a clear picture of what is important for students to be able to do, then organizing the curriculum, instruction, and assessment to make sure this learning ultimately happens. The emphasis in an OBE education system is on measured outcomes rather than inputs, such as how many hours the learners spend in class or what textbooks are provided. Outcomes may include a range of skills and knowledge. Generally, outcomes are expected to be concretely measurable. That is, the learner can run 50 meters in less than 1 minute, instead of the learner enjoys physical education class. A complete system of outcomes for a subject area normally includes everything from mere recitation of fact, learners will name 3 tragedies written by Shakespeare, to complex analysis and interpretation. The learner will analyze the social context of a Shakespearean tragedy in an essay. Writing appropriate and measurable outcomes can be very difficult, and the choice of specific outcomes is often a source of local controversies. An OBE curriculum means starting with a clear picture of what is important for students to be able to do, then organizing the curriculum, instruction, and assessment to make sure this learning actually happens. Outcomes-based assessment is based on the following 4 principles. 1. Clarity of focus. This means that everything teachers do must be clearly focused on what they want students to know, understand, and be able to do. In other words, teachers should focus on helping students to develop the knowledge, skills, and personalities that will enable them to achieve the intended outcomes that have been clearly articulated. 2. High expectations. It means that teachers should establish high, challenging standards of performance in order to encourage students to engage deeply in what they are learning. Helping students to achieve high standards is linked very closely with the idea that successful learning promotes more successful learning. 3. Designing down. It means that the curriculum design must start with a clear definition of the intended outcomes that students are to achieve by the end of the program. Once this has been done, all instructional decisions are then made to ensure achievement of the desired end result. 4. Expanded opportunities. Teachers must strive to provide expanded opportunities for all students. These principles are based on the idea that not all learners can learn the same thing in the same way and in the same time. However, most students can achieve high standards if they are given appropriate opportunities. Assessment is a vital part of OBE, but the nature of our assessment practices must change too. In particular, educators must reduce their reliance on written tests and exam papers. Educators must increase their range of assessment styles. These styles must be appropriate to the outcome educators are assessing, and assessments should be continuous and integrated into teaching. Assessment is a way of finding out what a person knows, understands, and thinks, and what he or she can do. Continuous assessment is simply a matter of being continually aware of how your learners are developing. There are a wide variety of methods in which a teacher can achieve this ongoing awareness. These would include watching the learner working in a group, listening to the learner explaining what he or she thinks, reading the learner's evaluation of his or her own work. This curriculum framework for general and further education and training sees assessment, teaching, and learning as totally integrated activities. It sees outcomes-based assessment operating in 3 levels in schools: formal summative assessment, formal continuous assessment, and informal formative assessment. Recording marks, which were traditionally part of the summative assessment, is still necessary but could be an insufficient way of recording achievement. Results of learning can often be better recorded in words by describing the extent to which a learner has progressed. Much of the formative assessment is also done verbally between the teacher and the learner, and between the learner and the learner. Let's look at a comparison between formative and summative assessment. Formative assessment is designed to support the teaching and learning process. It assists in planning future learning, diagnoses the learning strengths and weaknesses, provides feedback to the learner on his or her progress, helps to make decisions on the readiness of the learner to do a summative assessment, and is developmental in nature. The summative assessment happens at the end of a learning program, qualification, unit standard, or part qualification. The summative assessment helps to determine whether the learner is competent or not yet competent. In knowledge and input-based systems, this usually occurs after a specified period of study, for example, 1 year. In outcome-based education and training, a learner's readiness determines when assessment will take place. A summative assessment is carried out when the assessor and the learner agree the learner is ready for assessment.